name is Ryland Sawyer Hayes. I've been running Red State Horror for 3 years. In that time, I've driven into bayous at midnight. I've knocked on the doors of strangers in places I had no business being. I've sat across from people who told me things they'd never said out loud before, and I've tried to do those things justice on this channel. In 3 years, I've never put my own story on here. Not once. Tonight is different. This happened to me on a Tuesday night in November 2021. I've told exactly one person before tonight. I'm telling you now because I've spent 3 years helping other people find the words for things that happened to them, and I think it's time I found the words for this. So, let me tell you about Pine Brook, Louisiana. With a true story, the town that wasn't on any map, a town that, as far as I can tell, does not exist. Part 1, The Wrong Turn, November 9th, 2021, St. Helena Parish, Louisiana. I want to start with the boring parts, because the boring parts matter. They establish that I'm a person who drives these roads all the time, who knows Louisiana well, and who is not prone to getting spooked by dark roads and nothing. I want you to understand who I was before this happened, so you understand why it took me so long to figure out what was going on. November 9th, 2021. A Tuesday. I'd driven out to St. Helena Parish that afternoon for an interview with a woman named Celeste Broussard, a retired schoolteacher who'd contacted me about something strange that had been happening on her property. The interview ran long. These things always do when someone's been holding something for a while and finally has someone to tell. By the time I got back in the car, it was 10:15 p.m., full dark, and I was tired in the specific way you get tired after 2 hours of listening very hard. I know those roads reasonably well. I'd driven out there twice before for different stories. The plan was to pick up Highway 16 heading west, get to the interstate, and make it home to Baton Rouge in about an hour and 20 minutes. I missed the turn for Highway 16. Not dramatically. Not by much. I just came off Celeste Property Road going the wrong direction, and by the time I realized it, I was 4 miles in the wrong direction on a parish road that runs south through a pine forest. I pulled up the GPS. It told me to continue south for 2.2 miles. Then turn right on Parish Road 1087, which would loop me back to Highway 16. I followed the GPS. Parish Road 1087 was unpaved. Gravel, then packed dirt, then just the kind of road that exists because people have driven it enough times that the grass stopped growing. Dense pine on both sides. No houses, no lights, my headlights, the GPS, and nothing else. The GPS told me to turn right in 0.3 miles. And then it lost signal. Not slowly, not the thing where it goes gray and says recalculating. It just went blank. Blue screen, no map, no route, no little arrow showed me where I was. Just the app opens with nothing on it. I've driven without GPS before. It's not a crisis. I had a general sense of direction. West was roughly to my right. I kept going forward on the parish road, figuring I'd hit something I recognized or something with a name on a sign. About a mile further on I did. There was a sign hanging between 2 pine trees across the road, hand-painted on what looked like an old board, white letters on dark wood. My headlights hit it at about 100 yards, and I slowed down to read it. It said, "Welcome to Pine Brook," and below that, smaller, Est, 1887. I sat there with the engine idling for a second. I knew St. Helena Parish reasonably well, and I didn't know a town called Pine Brook. But rural Louisiana is full of communities so small they don't make it onto most maps. Crossroads settlements, old logging communities, and places that have a name to the people who live there, and nothing else to anyone outside. That's what I assumed this was. I drove under the sign, and there was a town on the other side of it. Part 2, Pine Brook. A proper little town, not big, a main street maybe 3 blocks long, 1 block of cross streets on each side, storefronts with lights on, a diner on the left side with a red neon open sign glowing in the window, and the words Pine Brook Eats painted on the glass in old-fashioned lettering, a hardware store, closed, but with the interior lights still on, the way you leave them on overnight as security, a post office, a filling station on the far end, with the overhead lights running, no cars on the street, no people on the sidewalks. But everything is lit and present, and the way a town is lit and present when the people in it are nearby, inside, around the corner, or just stepped away for a second. I drove down the main street slowly. My headlights were unnecessary. The street had its own lamps, old-style cast-iron ones, and they were all working. I looked for a cross-street sign to get my bearings. The first intersection had a sign, Main Street Crossing Millwork Road. Neither of those names meant anything to me. I pulled over and tried the GPS again. Still blank. Tried Google Maps as a separate app. It loaded, showing my blue dot, and the blue dot was sitting in the middle of an empty pine forest. No roads. No town, nothing. According to Google Maps, I was parked in a forest. According to my eyes, I was parked on Main Street in a town called Pinebrook. I've spent 3 years investigating things I can't explain, and the way I approach all of them is the same way I'm going to approach this. I'm going to tell you what I found, exactly as I found it, and I'm not going to reach for an explanation I can't support. So I'm going to tell you what happened next, and I'm going to trust you to hold the strangeness of it without me having to underline it. I got out of the car. The air was cool, the way Louisiana air gets in November, that specific, almost cold that feels like the state remembering it's supposed to have winter. It smelled like pine resin and something else I couldn't identify. Something faintly sweet. Not flowers. Older than flowers. I walked to the diner. The door was unlocked. A little bell above it rang when I pushed it open. One of those old spring bells, the kind you don't hear anymore. Inside, 6 booths along the left wall. A counter with 8 stools. A pie case with 3 pies under glass. And a Wurlitzer jukebox in the back corner with a soft internal glow. The grill behind the counter was on. I could hear it. I could smell it. Something had been cooking recently. The specific smell of a flat-top grill that's been running all evening. Nobody behind the counter. Nobody in the booths. On the counter, a coffee mug, half full. I put my hand around it. Not warm. Hot. Someone had been sitting there maybe 5 minutes ago. I stood in that diner for a moment, and I took stock of myself. I was tired, but not that tired. I hadn't been drinking. I hadn't taken anything. I was a person standing in a diner in a town that wasn't on the map, with a hot cup of coffee on the counter in front of me and a grill running in the back, and nobody in the building. I called out, "Hello? Anybody here?" The jukebox clicked, not like it was turning on, like a record player when the arm moves. And then the music started, slow, a song I didn't recognize, a woman's voice, something that sounded like it belonged to the late 1940s or early 50s. Clear and close, like whoever was singing was in the room. I stayed for a minute, listening. Then I walked back out to the street. I'm going to stop here for just a second. If you found this channel tonight, or if you've been here for a while and never hit subscribe, this is the moment. I've spent 3 years building red state horror for people who want the real thing. The stories that actually happened. The places you can drive to. The things that don't have clear explanations. This is my story. The one I've been sitting on for 3 years. You're the first audience I've ever told it to. Hit subscribe. Turn the bell on. Be here every Thursday. Because what I found next in that town, in the post office, and the guest register, is the part I've never said out loud before. Stay with me. Part 3, the guest register. I want to tell you about the post office because it's where the thing I've been sitting on for 3 years actually lives. The Pinebrook post office was a small building, a white wood frame building, the kind of building that's been standing since before anyone who's alive now can remember. The door was unlocked, same as the diner. Inside, a service counter, a wall of P.O. boxes with combination locks, a cork bulletin board with a few pieces of paper pinned to it, and on the counter, a large book. The kind of hardbound book that hotels and inns used to keep as a guest register. I don't know why I opened it. Something about the way it was positioned, centered on the counter, like it was meant to be seen. The pages were handwritten, names, dates, and short notations in the right column. The handwriting varied throughout. Different pens, different hands, entries going back through the pages to dates in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. All the way through decades of names I didn't recognize. I turned to the most recent entries at the back. The last several pages were from the 2000s, 2010s, and recent years. Each entry has the same format, a name, a date, and a short note in the right column. Things like passed through and November, or stayed one night, heading west, or just found us. I read down the last page, and about 3/4 of the way down I stopped. The entry read, Ryland Sawyer Hayes, November 9th, 2021, found us. My name, my full name. Today's date. I stood there looking at it for what I think was a long time. I'm not sure how long. I was very aware of the sound of my own breathing and the complete silence of everything else. The handwriting was not mine. I had never been to Pinebrook before. I had never written in this book. I had driven into this town 45 minutes ago by accident because my GPS lost signal on a parish road I'd taken wrong. My name was in the register. Today's date. In handwriting that wasn't mine. I photographed it. I have the photograph. I've looked at it many times in the 3 years since. It is exactly what it looks like. My name, written by someone else's hand, on the night I arrived, in a town I didn't know existed. I looked at the entries above mine. The one directly above was dated October 2019, A name I didn't recognize. The one above that was dated March 2017. The entries weren't frequent. Weeks, months, sometimes years between them. People who arrived the way I arrived, took a wrong turn, lost signal, drove under a sign, and found a town on the other side. I turned to the very first page of the register. The first entry was dated September 4th, 1887. The note in the right column, in ink that had faded to the color of old tobacco, read, "First visitor, long expected, Part 4, leaving Pinebrook." I walked out of the post office and stood on the main street of Pinebrook, Louisiana, at approximately 11:45 at night, with the street lamps running, and the diner lit up, and the grill still going, and the jukebox probably still playing, and I made a decision. I was going to leave, not because I was frightened, exactly. More because I understood that I had stumbled into something that had its own pace and its own logic, and that the correct response was not to push against it. Ray Fontenot told me something in our interview that's always stayed with me. He said, when you don't know the rules of a place, the smart move is to observe the ones you can see and respect the ones you can't. I thought about that standing on Main Street in Pinebrook. I got in my car. I turned around in the parking lot of the hardware store and drove back up Main Street the way I'd come in, past the diner, past the post office, past the filling station. Drove under the Welcome to Pinebrook sign from the other side, which read, "Thank you for visiting Pinebrook. Come back soon." And the moment I was past it, the GPS came back on. Just like that. Full signal, map loaded, blue dot sitting precisely on Parish Road 1087, 1.4 miles from the intersection with Highway 16. I drove home. I made it back to Baton Rouge by 1 a.m. I sat in my driveway for a while before going inside. The next morning, I pulled up Google Maps and tried to find Parish Road 1087. It's there. The road exists, but where the road runs on the satellite view, there is nothing on either side of it but pine forest. No buildings, no street grid, no main street, no post office. I drove back out there 2 weeks later in the daytime. The sign between the two pine trees was there, faded in the daylight, easy to miss. Welcome to Pinebrook, EST. 1887. I drove under it. Pine forest, on both sides. The road continues south with nothing along it. No town, no diner, no post office, no filling station. I parked where I thought the main street would be, and got out. Walked into the trees on the right side of the road. Nothing, pine forest, no foundations, no cleared land, no evidence that anything had ever stood there. I've been back 3 more times. Always the same. The sign is always there. The town never is. Except once. In the summer of 2023, I drove out at night. Late. 2 in the morning. The street lamps were on. I could see them through the trees before I reached the sign. That warm amber glow of cast iron street lamps, the kind that don't make the road commercial, they make it somewhere. I sat in my car at the edge of the sign for a long time. And then I drove home. I don't know why I didn't go in that second time. I've asked myself many times since. The closest I can get is this. The first time, I didn't know what I was driving into. The second time, I did. And whatever Pinebrook is, it felt important to me that I had been a guest in it, and that going back was a choice with a different weight than the accident of my first visit. I don't want to be a tourist in a place like that. So I left the street lamps on, and I went home. I spent 3 years on this channel asking other people to trust me with the things they couldn't explain. The things that happened to them on ordinary days, or on nights they drove somewhere they weren't supposed to be. I've sat with all of it, and I've tried to give it back to you with the care it deserved. This is the one I kept for last, not because it's the strangest, not because I couldn't find the words, but because it's mine. And because for a long time I wasn't sure it was mine to share. I think it is now. My name was in that register before I got there. Written in a hand that wasn't mine, on a night I arrived by accident, in a town that appears when it wants to and doesn't when it doesn't. I don't know what Pinebrook is. I don't know who writes those entries. I don't know how many names are in that book, or whether the people attached to them know about each other. But I know one thing. The first entry from September 4th, 1887 said, "First visitor." It was long expected, which means whatever Pinebrook is, it was waiting. Before any of the names in that register. Before the register itself. Waiting for visitors who take wrong turns on dark roads in St. Helena Parish, Louisiana, and drive under a sign into something they were never supposed to find. I was expected, and that is the most comforting thing I've ever discovered in 3 years of doing this work, or the most unsettling. I still haven't decided which. If you've ever driven into a place that shouldn't have been there, a town, a building, a road that wasn't on the map when you looked later, I need to hear from you. Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. My name is Ryland Sawyer Hayes. This is Red State Horror. I'll see you next Thursday.